Welcome to the panel where we connect green and digital. My name is Andrej Špik. I'm CEO of Inštitut for Green Transition and Sustainable Society, IPM Green&Sustainable. We advise private and public entities on green transition, sustainable development, and proper use of digital tools. Tools are always important, but we believe that the key ingredient for a successful transition of any kind, being digital, green, or something else, are inclusion, competencies, and the right culture. And now about this panel. The environment is a key topic of this century. Today we will explore what is the relation between the digital revolution and the different ways of combating climate change. We will discuss the impact of digitalization on the environment with our excellent guests. Their answers may surprise you. With us today are Nina Meglič, Head of Project Management Office at Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Štajerska. Nina is also a National Coordinator of Strategic Research and Innovation Partnership and the project partner at Networks for the Transition to a Circular Economy, SRIP Krožno gospodarstvo. Nina has long experience in project management in topics related to circular economy, sustainable development, circular business models, empowering women as researchers and entrepreneurs from working both at Chamber of Commerce and the National Institute of Chemistry in Slovenia. Her current main goal is to raise awareness and support of relevant stakeholders in Slovenia to exploit the business opportunities of the green transition with enabling sustainable future to next generations. Next guest is Petra Kandus. Petra is a sustainability strategy advisor at Center energetsko učinkovitih rešitev, or English Sustainable Business Network Slovenia, known as CER. CER is a non-governmental private organization, a leading network of advanced companies and organizations, accelerating sustainable development and green circular economy. Petra holds a Master in Sustainability Management from Columbia University in New York and has extensive experience in developing and implementing sustainability programs in the public and private sectors. As Environmental Policy Manager at the Port of New York and New Jersey, she set the agency's carbon emission reduction goals in line with the Paris Accord, managed greenhouse gas and sustainability reporting, and drafted data-based environmental policy recommendations for New York airports and ports. Petra is actively engaged in the decarbonization of businesses in her role at CER and helps SMEs with sustainable transition through her consultancy, Gentian. And we also have with us docent Dr. Primož Banovec. Primož is a research associate at the Faculty of Civil and Geodetic Engineering at the University of Ljubljana. He's a renewed expert in the field of flood risk modeling in Slovenia and abroad. Primož is also a specialist for flood and wastewater management systems, as well as environmentally friendly construction. He has great experience in both academic study and professional consulting for public and private sectors as regards to the introduction of digital and smart systems in water and waste management, intended for greater system efficiency and successful crisis management. Welcome to all, and thank you for being with us. Now, about the challenge. We are in the climate crisis. Today, we will check if digital technologies can make a positive contribution to tackle the climate crisis, or can they make climate change even worse? Why so? Digitalization is a key factor and facilitator of the transition to a circular economy and sustainable societies. By collecting large amounts of data, analyzing them, and converting them into useful information, it is possible to construct working circular solutions in key areas. Digitalization enables comprehensive energy solution, smart management of buildings, cities, and rural areas, new forms of mobility, 3D printing, digitalization in agriculture, and new business models in many other areas. All this should significantly contribute to greater energy efficiency and more effective consumption of resources and raw materials. Now, the possible negative effects of digital technologies on environment are very much related to the positive ones. Let's take one of more provocative examples, cryptocurrencies. These are supposed to enable economic transactions without physical money, but at the same time, a huge amount of electricity is used to operate the computers that ensure the safe operation of such a digital service. All digital devices also use lithium and other rare minerals or metals. Many of the mining and other related processes are highly toxic to the environment. And next dilemma, is the impact of digitalization on the environment the same for the rich and the poor, for the young and the old? Can the rich with more resources be more environmentally friendly than the poor? Do the rich have more ability to buy electric cars, engage in more green construction, are more likely to be able to work from home, etc.? How can we bridge this gap and give all parts of the population the opportunity to contribute to carry for the environment? We will touch upon the role of politics and state institutions to act in this area in a way that benefits citizens, businesses, and the public good at the same time. We will also assess the role of civil society. Finally, in the coming years, we will have to be successful in two transformations at the same time, digital and green. Research shows that less than 20% of digital transformations are successful, and green ones are likely to be similarly difficult. What do we have to do right in order to survive and to thrive? There are so many burning issues on the table, so let's start the debate. We have 10 short questions for our experts, and for a quick start, I would ask all of you, what is, in your opinion, the chief environmental issue today and why? And I propose to start with Nina, and then Petra, and then Primož.
Can I just have another suggestion? Sorry.
Yeah, please.
I would like to introduce other 5 participants of this panel to introduce themselves. We are a very small group, kind of family. I'm very happy that we are actually small. It's nice to be small. And let's also hear for a short introduction from other participants.
Great, great proposal. So please.
Lea Plut, perhaps, if you are with us.
Hi, yeah, I'm here. I'm Lea. I'm currently officially still a student, but working in marketing. I would like to know more about this panel, since we young ones are the ones who should carry on this agenda of keeping our environment, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Excellent, thank you. Anya? Anya perhaps some microphone problems. Bojana?
I think they both don't have connected microphones, so maybe we should go on.
Let's go on. If you write something in the chat, that would be fine as well. So Blaž, please.
Yeah, hello, I'm Blaž. I am a web developer. I develop web pages, web stores, and everything connected with that. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Doreen?
Hello, everyone. My name is Doreen. I'm a compliance officer at UniCredit Luxembourg. And, well, very happy to be here and nice to meet you all.
Thank you very much. So let's continue with the panelists and set program, please, Andrej.
Thank you so much. So shall I repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Okay, the first question was really just to warm up. So according to you, what is the biggest environmental challenge we are currently facing and why?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the nice introduction and very good atmosphere. Despite the low number of participants and the digital version, I think this is somehow also an advantage for us today, so that we can really have a concrete discussion on the very important topics. So to answer the question, I was already thinking a lot about how to answer this, and I think that the biggest environmental challenge is currently that it doesn't affect our pockets enough yet. Because it's hard to pick one that would be so unique that I could point it out, but I think that when it will have such big influence that it will really impact our lives, the things will start to change in higher speed. Yeah, this is my experience from working in the circular economy now for more than 5 years, and also from looking at other things that are happening in the society. Just to give an example, in Maribor, I don't know if you remember, we had the whole issue with the radars on the streets. So this really had a very big effect on the mobilization of people, and I think that the same will need to happen with, when it comes to the environmental issues, because at the end of the day, the biggest influence is when each individual contributes, not only the state or a specific company, but each and every one of us.
Hey,
So
Nina, that's such a great example, because this, I mean, Maribor example, maybe for Dorin, just a short explanation. Municipality in the second biggest Slovene city installed smart radar systems to measure the excess velocity of vehicles, and had some almost automatic traffic fine charging system. And this produced so much revolt that the mayor had to resign. Not just to resign, he was actually walked out from the office. And this gives a very good example how digitalization has to be tied to the, let's say, cost effects of people in order to react. So maybe Petra, what do you see as the biggest challenge of?
Oh, that's a great example. I can imagine the uproar of people in Maribor. But anyway, yeah, I tend to focus on numbers. So my personal mission in life is to accelerate the decarbonization of society. So I have to say that you know, the concentration of carbon dioxide, 350 parts per million of carbon dioxide is what was considered safe concentration in the atmosphere, and we are now at 420 and passing. So climate change, which is the result of the increase of this carbon dioxide concentration, is really starting to affect every aspect of our existence. I mean, the last 20 years have been the hottest on record, and we can see that in extreme weather events, which are like becoming more and more frequent: forest fires, droughts, floods, you name it. And yes, I think Slovenia has not been as affected yet physically as some other places in the world, but I think that's coming. And what we need to do as a society is cut emissions globally, every country, every industry, every company, every family, and we need to do it fast, because you know, if we are to avoid the worst consequences of climate change, we really need to cut our emissions in half every decade from now until 2050. So we need every tool at our disposal, and that's why I'm excited about this constant conversation with the digital groups. So because we especially need digitization to help speed up this whole process.
Exactly, yes. So we have visibility, we need tools, and we need some clear indicators, because most of the population doesn't understand what, 100 particles per million more of CO2 means. We need something that will be, painfully visible.
Yep.
Primož, how do you see the biggest challenge?
Well, I'm sharing my screen, thank you. Because obviously I have a kind of Zoom experience with students, and I'm kind of visual, just because I have also some prepared issues ready, and this is the issue I think that is most important I'm sharing. And well, we know about this environment and the public good. We know about the essay from 1833, Tragedy of the Commons by William Forster. And it's a wonderful book by Elinor Ostrom, 1990, Governing the Commons. And I think nobody's reading the books anymore. So understanding that the environment is very special common good. And in Slovenia, we have good translation to it. It's javno dobro. And nevertheless, understanding the concept of public good and the necessity to manage it effectively and efficiently is actually not completely understood. It's a hard topic, theoretically hard, practically hard topic, and I think it's still somewhere else. And it's interesting that nobody is really learning or teaching, understanding what is actually commons. I think this is the biggest challenge. Everything else are just indicators. So also the CO2 levels, I observe them as indicators of not understanding the problem of commons. Very important indicator, but we have also other indicators which indicate that we are doing many things wrong, especially in the field of environment. Well, in Slovenia, we have a wonderful book. It's the book of Elinor is translated. I'm making some marketing for the book. And it's good that we have it translated in our national language. I recommend reading. Thank you.
I'll also fetch some books if this is the name of the game, and then we can go. But I agree with you 100%. As I said before, culture is the key for change. So if we can motivate, enlighten people,
educate.
Yes, but education is not enough. I mean, we are so overly educated, but it's this change from knowing something to acting that is crucial. And there maybe we will.
I obviously work with students, and they know everything from the primary school already. At least Slovenian people, they know every single piece of the photosynthesis process, or ATP, which means breathing, the cellular level breathing. How the adenosine triphosphate is actually being transformed into energy. Come on, guys. Okay, you're overeducated, but let's talk about some basic necessity for the knowledge, like common good. And nobody's educating, or none of the primary or secondary level education, nothing about the common good.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you.
They actually learn about the CO2 problem. Okay, that's good. But they don't understand that especially atmosphere is our common good. And this year we were having, now that was last year, of course, we were having the referendum of the commons of the riparian area next to the rivers, you remember? And it was a brief glance that people got a little bit aware that commons is so important. It was a unique phenomena in Slovenia that there was a referendum for common good, which is riparian land. And people got just for 1 second very well aware, well, if they take that away from us, that's important. But we know it was a wonderful, very nice moment that people was aware of this concept of
Primož still with us? Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, this is now a bit philosophical, but I mean, one of the challenges of digital is that they are so good at taking away our public and our private spaces. And it's probably one of the key challenges in this green transition. How do we balance public and private in digital and in physical world? But I mean, we used to have this saying, think globally, act locally. Is it still relevant, or is it relevant for a green transition? Maybe, I don't know, Petra.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that it's always important to be aware of global trends, but be it economical or environmental, social, what have you, but solutions to these global problems are usually most effective when they're designed for applications considering the local resources as well as constraints, of course, you know. And, you know, in sustainability, professionals are usually tasked with keeping the big picture, systemic picture in mind, and then figuring out how to achieve a goal in different environments. So that's always the biggest challenge. And you always have to find solutions, find local solutions to global problems. So there's an example. CER developed a tool called Green Star, which is a tool to help companies on their green transition. And the key here is that the tool is available in Slovene language, which you say, well, what's the big deal about that? But it's making really these complex sustainability concepts accessible to local companies, and therefore lowering the barriers to green transition. So that's just one example, but I definitely think that that is a mantra that is very much applicable here.
Thank you. Primož, you have any experience in applying this local and global?
Of course, I have a problem with that. The problem is, you know, until very early 90s, there was, history says, and all the environmental books and everything says that it was the popular word of being earth friendly. Sounds nice, completely useless. And this is also thinking globally, work locally. Sounds nice, but it is completely useless. So
That's a slogan, yes.
Yes, it's just a slogan. You can put like any sticker on your bumper, and if you say that, I don't know, whatever sticker you put on it, it's just a sticker on the bumper. And we know that we need, I'm returning to my previous discussion, that we need efficient and effective management of commons. And this is very explicit measures connected also to environmental economics, of course, but don't blind us with slogans. It's dangerous, actually.
I agree with you. I mean, the best version I saw was think globally, drink locally, which was probably the right place to use it. Nina, how do you see the role of slogans in digital transformation, I mean, green digital transformation?
I'm not so against this slogan as Mr. Primož. I think that looking at the current state of the security and climate situation in the world, local value chains are becoming more and more relevant, as well as self-sufficiency in terms of energy and food. So when it comes to this slogan, I believe we have to really act locally, but while thinking on how we will influence on the world as such. And I think that also looking from the experience of the members of the partnership that I'm coordinating, companies really started to work more on the national level because the value chains were erupted and they couldn't get the materials from the other parts of the world. This in some ways changed the way the value chains are established, and on the other, it also speeded up the transition to circular economy because they had to replace the virgin materials with the recycled ones, with secondary raw materials. I think we are now in the phase when this slogan is actually coming to its realization. Before we were maybe talking about it, but now we really have the need to implement it somehow.
A good one. Primož, you wanted to add something?
Globally and yes, so globally and locally. Currently, all countries are closing agricultural transfers. Everybody knows that by the end of the year, probably there will be 100 million people dying of hunger. Who is here global and who is here local? And we won't care that somebody there is dying of hunger, 100 millions. And of course, we will care that nobody is dying perhaps in our countries of hunger. Of course, I'm very much worried that everybody is perhaps thinking globally and working nothing locally, because other countries are adopting the measures for increased agricultural production in order to avoid dying of hunger. I'm very explicit, not having some social crisis. So this globally, workly, I'm really connecting to trying to connect, and with my work, I am connecting with very explicit processes, measures, actions. So we have to avoid this, what I said, I agree with that globally and locally. I'm just putting an example here, what is going on, not with our oil and gas chains and products. We are talking about very basic substance, now it's food. And basically thinking globally, understand that we are facing global hunger and that we have to work locally. I don't see, at least in Slovenia, nobody's working locally, underlining the activations. I think it's Article 16 of the agricultural land law. And well, we have legislation on that subject. Nobody's talking. And this is a big problem that nobody is working locally, even on the such strategic measure. So it's, as a concept, oh yeah, sure. But then everybody is just thinking globally and working nothing locally. Thank you.
Nina, you disagree?
Yes. I think that a lot has changed in the past years, and especially after COVID. There are a lot of local initiatives also when it comes to local production of food and connecting with digital tools the local producers. For example, I am part of a platform which is coordinated via very simple Facebook group and Google Drive, Google form. It's called Mali Plac za prihodnost. They every week local producers come to Maribor, and from different parts of the world. I just put in the what I want from them. These are vegetables, fruits, honey, etc. And they go from, they start in the morning, and they each hour they are on different location, Ljubljana, Maribor, Bistrica, Celje, whatever. And every day in the week they take a different route. So on Fridays, for example, they are here in Maribor, and I know for at least 5 similar initiatives in Slovenia. And this is just one example. Otherwise, as I explained also in my previous input, there are SRIP members that really take advantage of the industrial symbiosis business model, which is very known in circular economy, and are linking in order to reduce the waste at their doorstep. There are, I think, some green stars in Slovenia, which are very devoted to these ideas and are already implementing stuff. I once had the feeling that I also need to save the whole world, but now I saw that that's impossible. So I took a different approach by everyday role modeling, let's say, to the colleagues in the environment and people with whom I work, as well as my family. I try to show what can be done. And then I think that if everyone tries to do the same in its own small community, there can be a difference someday. It will not be as big as if, I don't know, a corporation invests in whatever, but somehow underline what I had, what I answered in my first question. I think this is what we can do as a small mosaic in the whole society.
Thank you. It's a great contribution. I understand Primož. He says too little, too late, and this is probably the main challenge.
Yeah,
Petra,
I agree as well on that. I think there are big promises, but I believe our energy has to be put in what we can contribute in our own power, or something like that.
Yeah, I agree, but at the same time we need to change something on the systematic, on the decision-making level. Petra, you have a very rich experience in moving huge rigid systems in the direction of, let's say, green transition. What kind of tools were used in United States to be successful? Was only the legislation? Was there, any regulatory pressure that was, easing this part because it was not necessary to sell it to the decision makers? So what, according to you, would work in Slovenia fast enough that we are not hungry in the autumn?
I don't want to dismiss the participation of Dorin, who he raised his hand.
Sorry, but, Dorin, I didn't see. So please.
I'm happy to jump into this. Maybe you can save his question for after. But so interesting. Anybody working in sustainability field in the US when Trump was elected president will recall, this feeling of dread when he pulled the US out of the Paris Accord. And even if you went on any EPA, Environmental Protection Agency websites, the resources pages just went dark overnight. And no one in the public sector was allowed to say like the C word, right? Climate change. There was no climate change. There was you were not allowed to say that word. It was pretty eerie. But guess what happened? States and businesses stepped up and announced to the world that, quote unquote, we are still in. They created an organization to actually encourage states and private actors to become committed and to express their commitments to the world. And action on the part of businesses was greater than ever before. Actually, at the Port Authority, where I was at the time, we this was the time when we set the emission reduction targets in line with the Paris Accord, and we were the first public agency to do so. And it's what I'm trying to say is that the business was the driving force, and it is the driving force in any country's economy, and it has the creativity and the wherewithal to impart really big change. But what, that's possible. But of course, once the federal government leads, everything becomes turbocharged. Things really take off, because of course, only the government can create this regulatory framework and this long-term certainty that supports the investments and attracts green technologies and products and services. And of course, only the government, can embark on these systemic infrastructure projects, investments into less carbon-intensive transport, for example, railroads and bus and public transit and all that. Only the government can really do. So they're both necessary and interdependent. But I would what I'm trying to illustrate with this example is that we don't have to wait for the government to do something, but I think Europe has been quite fortunate that the European Union has taken such a really decisive step and has really put its money where its mouth is, and not only set these very, very detailed strategic long-term goals, but also devoted significant funding to make it happen. Not just funding, but also all kinds of support that goes with it. So that's my perspective.
Petra, thank you. Doreen, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, this is one of the few moments when I'm alone in the office and I can talk. So I'll go back to your first question, if I may, and just I found one point that I think is important, and that's in general the cost of climate change. And well, two parts here. First of all, are governments and people actually prepared to pay the cost, because it isn't free? And secondly, are we able to make financing polluting industries cost more and more in order as a measure of discouragement? So cost-wise, these are just 2 points. Also, disclaimer, these are layman's opinions. I'm good in compliance, looking forward to ESG compliance, of course, which is the new, I don't know, before ESG you had payment services. Now this is the new kid in town. A second point, if I may, would be the maturity of the measures we are taking. I think they're just at the beginning. KPIs are still not that okay, because they need time. So, it's a bit like we need time, but we don't actually have time. So I don't know how you can solve that. You also have to, another example, combating greenwashing. This is something that has happened in many other legal, spheres, and people always try to cut costs and just pretend that they're doing something, create false advertisements. I wrote something else down here because you guys were talking about education at some point. And it's interesting that we're trying to combat problems in the 21st century using education from the 19th century. This is still going on. And we always need to remember that, even Western economies, I'm talking here about Luxembourg. I've been here for a year or so. And although the education sector is very well financed and so on, it's still stuck in the 19th century. And this is what I was told by experts here in Luxembourg. And just the last one, if I may, it's an example of let's say a green initiative from the private sector here. which is a bad practice example, if you'd ask me. So what they did, it's a flex car, business, which in theory is great. They have, I think, hybrid and electric cars, probably just electric. I haven't really read into their business that much, but I saw that it's the first such initiative here in Luxembourg. And but what they did was basically take a green area and put parking spots in it. This totally defeats the purpose of going green, if you'd ask me. Yeah. So yeah, that's it from me. Thank you.
Great. Primož.
Thank you. Not to, this time I fully agree with everything. That's great. So doesn't look like, oh no, Primož. Yeah. So first thing, I fully agree with Petra, and we are really blessed, especially as a small country, to live in the framework of larger society, which has, of course, initially at least common environmental standards, setting common environmental standards in order to enable the free trade agreement. We know why initially the common environmental standards, especially on the emission levels, were set. So I really say that this process, being part of a big family of countries providing common framework for environmental issues, widespread, from air, noise pollution, light pollution, water pollution, everything, it's just totally wonderful. On the other hand, I would say that United States is still on some fields a role model for us, like fire system provided by the United States, that's actually old system, was not implemented to that level yet in the European Union. So don't be too confident that we have everything set and finalized, everything in the same position. So that we are, okay, I think that our education, obviously, that's a topic that Dorian said and mentioned. And on the other hand, green initiative from the private sector, that's interesting topic. I think that everything is gray a little bit. So sometimes the green initiatives from private sectors, they are very well aware of their liabilities. So they want to protect themselves from the really strong liabilities. And there are some very good examples from private sectors limiting themselves, recognizing the toxicity of some substances and early recognizing that and stopping by themselves, even before the regulatory level reached them, because they were aware they will pay like, it's a gray. So we have to respect. And I really like some experiences from private sector. We were in some conferences when there were conferences, and there was something first declaring, talking about, I don't know, 3 minutes about the legislative framework of his presentation. And we were, okay, I'm coming from private sector and I have to explain this. And then said, I'm fully authorized to express to you my challenge, and we don't know about the solution of it. And I said, okay, now we are talking with private, public, combining knowledge for the best of humanity. So there is, let's say, the full plethora of private, and we have to establish and regulate this relationship between public and protection and cooperation with private. I fully endorse that.
Thank you. Great addition. Maybe Doreen to answer about economical models of green. There are great books. I mean, theory is there. I have one called The Spirit of Green, which is, just let me see how to trick the background to show it. So, I mean, there is a personal story with it. It's the first book that I paid the income, the custom tax, because they shortened the name The Spirit, and Nordhaus is the author, so it was the Nordhaus Spirit, and they thought I am receiving spirit from United States, and I was extra charged for it. So it's, you know, you see that economic incentives work in many directions. I think we came to a very important point. So what works with changing the habits? We saw in a very tragic way that adding knowledge to a discussion in a modern world where you have so many different channels, so many different bubbles, usually makes worse. So instead of convincing people with an argument, they just pick up what enforces their previous belief. So it has to be done or supported with additional means. And one of such digital tools is this, they call it gamification platforms. So Chinese are playing now for a while with, commercial platforms. So it's like Alibaba or Doesnt, and you have all these different elements that support responsible citizenship. How you treat, the electricity, the waste, what kind of transport you use, things like that. Do you think that this could help also with changing the mentality of people and install this green culture we need? Because it's not, I agree with what was said before, tools are nice, but they have to be used in the right way, because, this hammer dilemma. If you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So here, how can we use digital tools to really not just help, but also push people to change something?
I think I can talk. Sorry,
okay.
Petra first.
All right. Okay, I'll be short. So I think just existentially, I've been thinking a lot about this lately, and I read this book, which is not an environmental book, but and I read it about a couple of years ago, but I just can't get it out of my mind. It's called The Cloud Atlas. And what made me think about when I read that book was that we as a human race advance, we develop and we really advance, we build amazing things, and we create amazing art and structures and whatnot, and our societies are organized and all that, and technology advances and all that. But deep down, the human nature does not change. So all that changes is the tools that we have, and we become more sophisticated with our tools. And so, but human nature just doesn't change. It's always the same. So I think that the key question here is, how do you, we need like psychologists and marketing people to really come in, and they've been studying the human nature and really how do we capitalize on that knowledge to push and to direct the behavior in a certain direction that is beneficial to everybody. Now, also, like to Dorin's point that we educate people with 19th century. I would say that we should certainly use the technology that we have available to and encourage people to use it in education and anywhere else. But I think what is more important is to understand what are some of the key aspects, what are some of the key topics that we need to teach the kids and everybody else. And that goes back to Primož's point, which he was making at the very beginning. Why don't we teach people about the common good, or whatever, the tragedy of the commons and all that. So what are these key topics that everybody needs to learn in school, and then use whatever technology you have, or whatever means you have to make it in such a way that the students are going to receive it in the most efficient and a way that they will respond to in the greatest degree. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank
you. Thank you. Wonderful outlines for many, let's say, short interventions and comments. And but I would refer to Petra's because it's the last. Thank you. And a line I really see as a potentially interesting is a concept I follow somehow from one Swedish project, is commitment management. And because we are working also in the implementation of, let's say, transfer of national incident management system and incident command systems in Slovenia and Croatia and partially in Italy. That's part of my projects. And basically, when you transfer the crisis management and kind of turn it up and around, you come to the commitment management and understanding your commitments to yourself, to your nearest, to the society, and basically, are we aware of our commitments, and is everybody aware of our commitment by ourselves? And is everybody clearly aware of the commitments which are intuitively expected or explicitly signed as some kind of contract to somebody else? So it's a big world of the commitment management, and I would just say that if somebody wants to develop a commitment management project, I'm for it. I find this field completely unexplored.
Actually, it's a very good comment. We are very active in digital transformations, where also you have tools, you have processes, you have culture, and you have business models. And it seems that our debate goes deeper and deeper in these soft elements. So how to harness, how to create the culture of change. Because also in the digital transformations, all the research shows that companies and societies that approach the digital transformation from the cultural point of view were 6 times more successful than the ones who said, no, we just need technology, we need tools, and we need some of the processes changed. So I would say in order to be successful, we need competencies, but competencies are in the process of being formed, and we need the right culture. And how to build this culture is really critical. We see as a consequence of COVID that in many developed countries, young people are quitting their jobs. So they said, we have enough, we don't want to work for a company that doesn't have a purpose, and we will find something else. So money is not everything. And here again, I think we have to produce a clear purpose. I mean, saving the planet should be the strongest purpose in the world, but it just doesn't work. So it has to be then probably developed through some sort of values and some sort of commitment management, as you said, Primož. But how can we do this? Maybe Petra, any experience from your transformation work in United States? Because probably there you also have to change cultures.
Yeah, I mean, that is probably the biggest challenge, right? And it's not only the challenge because you don't necessarily have the right message or way to get to this person, but it's also that very often you don't have direct reports. Like you can't just dictate your whatever you see, whatever you think is important, and then whoever you communicate with is just going to take that as a given, right? So and I'm talking about dealing with community members. I'm talking about dealing with coworkers, and I'm dealing with educating the management. It's all this. It's all the task is the same, but the approach is very different, right? Because when so community members, I mean, how do you do it? You organize and you create a group that then disseminates some of these messages to their individual groups, and you organize events, and you create opportunities for people to come together and talk and exchange ideas, and so that's one approach. Then you have your coworkers and your management, where you're talking about how do you establish this culture within an organization. And that there we find that it unless the management is already like they've already understood the issues and they are driving it, but in most cases that's not the case. It comes down to leading from the middle, and it's people who understand the issues and are working and creating these cogs within the organizations that then slowly bring people into the fold and create a positive information loop, if you will. So I'm talking very much in sort of analogies, but yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy, and that's why I found myself in this situation many times, and that's why I'm sort of like, I like studying people's psychology. It's very interesting, because what makes people act on something and what makes people turn against you. Like it's very easy to get the exact opposite reaction to what you want and turn them off.
Thank you.
I see Nina.
Yeah, Nina, is your hand up?
Yeah, I can support what you said now, Petra, with some practical experience we had in the SRIP. We also implement activities for the development of human resources in the field of circular economy. We have a project, a competence center, and we work individually with members on these topics. And we went, we implemented the process where we somehow we have written down the whole working processes, technological processes of the members together with the management. And on the basis of that, we then prepared a competence model. And what we observed from this exercise is that exactly what you are saying, that you need a very informed and strong manager who will push this and will be supported by the change makers, and not only from the inside of the organization, but also outside. Because as you described, people are not willing to change. And this is what we have experienced going through these processes with the members. But on one hand, they also see that think that they have everything already developed and in place. And on the other hand, when you start really looking into the everyday business, you see that the general ideas are there, but the implementation is really something else. And I think here we are really now in like a breaking point, knowing that we have all this support from the state, from the European Union. The calls are pushing for the digital and green transition. Now I think is the time when the companies are really experiencing what competences and actions are missing still and need to be implemented in the following years, especially if we want to go towards decarbonization, which I think is a long and very ambitious goal.
Nina, thanks. I mean, I did my MBA studies in the previous millennium, and at that time, you know, the management strategy, if you wanted to achieve something, was, you know, vision, mission, strategic goals, action plan with resources, and KPIs. But it seems, I mean, here we have the crucial mission and vision in the entire era of humanity, but nothing is changing fast enough. So Primož, you are fortunate to work with young generation, and you know, experts say they're different. Do you see this difference? And if there is a difference, can it help us to be successful?
No, they are not different. They're the same. So basically, they have bigger problems. Actually, the COVID crisis has encircled them in a very strange environment of virtual communications, and they are kind of sad. Desperate, perhaps even. Mm-hmm. It's basically, we always said that children are not playing on the playgrounds anymore. And with COVID crisis, we actually said, don't play on the playgrounds, sit behind a computer and watch small screens. And this is disaster. And they are not really, I think they are not engaged. They're really desperate. And also the messages we are telling them in such discussion like today, no future. I think this is the general message they feel, and they are there are of course some of them, which I feel they have some energy to change something, to hope for something, but basically we are not giving them the clear, nice future. And I think this is also the disaster concept of the media has a role in it, because the media very much like disasters and end of the world. Okay. You know, this message of the end of the world can be perceived in so many ways by so many different people, especially young souls, that you can really affect them. That's danger. I'm sharing my screen again. So I would like to talk about the fourth industrial revolution and environment. I think this is also one of the important views we shouldn't forget, and we are somehow approaching to the end of our panel. I think you can see it. It's in Slovene, sorry, but even if you don't know Slovene, you know what the graphics is showing. And basically, from the point of view of the environment, where are we? I think that the environment hasn't entered, perhaps has entered the second industrial revolution. Mm-hmm. I'm telling that because our systems for the monitoring of the environment are so lagging behind the actual requirements, and everybody's happy if there is no extremely strict control. And at least in Slovenia, for example, the emissions are monitored by the factories which produce emissions. Isn't that nice? And water abstraction is reported to the state by measurements of water abstractors. And me as a modeler, and we are combining the complex decision support systems, trying to put them together. Actually, we have so little possibility to work and develop these systems in Slovenia because all the data are somehow fake. And the reality is somewhere else. So that's why I'm talking a little bit about the environment. And I think the modifications of the same reality could be observed in any country. So we say, okay, yeah, I know, I'm just saying now that Slovenia has a problem. Yeah, we have it. But then we talk with Italian about their problems and say, ooh, you have serious problems. No country is exception in that. That's good news somehow. But I think that nobody is too serious about environment. And at least also from the political point of view, I can say for Slovenia, that Ministry of Environment is always assigned to, yeah, somebody needs to minister something, and yeah, let's put this one as a Minister for Environment. Doesn't matter who it is. It would be quite strange if, for example, Minister of Finance would be not economist by education and have some background in public finances, I don't know what, but just for the Ministry of Environment, well, everybody will do. So it's entire upper structure which is somehow, I would say, not really sincere about these issues. And also another, which is completely for another, let's say, comment, so I close this one, is discussion about the climate change and the climate adaptation process. At least in the water sector, we are slightly, I would say, a little bit frustrated. I would say why? Because we are already fully confronting the climate change. It is here. The return periods are changing, the droughts changing, the floods changing, the sea level rise changing. It's here. And we know that we are traveling in very uncertain future from the point of view of existing infrastructure and all the risk management related to it. So I think that together with the climate change and the change from the fossil fuels and CO2 ppm's reduction or at least stabilization, we really have to talk about climate change adaptation. It's here. So sometimes when in some society which is discussing, yeah, climate change, part per million emissions, defossilization, I would say, yeah, okay, great, do it. It's really necessary. It should be done decades ago. But let's talk about the adaptation process. It's here in our labs. And we have to adapt. And I could talk for hours about very clear examples and disaster expectations, because at least from the point of view of discharges, all our hydraulic structures intended for flood management are in the field of complete uncertainty, and we don't know it. On the other hand, there's a clear agreement also, don't blame it on the climate change. It's so easy that every flood now is said, yeah, you know, unmaintained hydraulic structures, we have the same issues like, for example, New Orleans had during the Katrina disaster. Unclear who is managing the last 5 meters and so on. But yeah, okay, just blame it on the climate change. Please don't blame everything on the climate change. We did so much changes and wrongdoings in our environmental management systems and subcomponents of these systems that we have to be pretty much sincere about it. And that's also one of the message. Don't blame everything on the climate change. Thank you.
Great, Primož, thank you. I think you pointed out also for the digitalization aspect to very relevant issues. One is quality and quantity of data. So this is called garbage in, garbage out approach, and role of algorithms. So, you know, what we do with this data, And here I'm talking about, hard data, so, measurements, predictions, modeling, things like that, but even more role of algorithms in disseminating fake news, relativization, things that kill us as society and take initiative away from people because they feel powerless. And it seems that this is the crucial part we will have to get right as a society in order to survive. Because if we, stay for a bit longer in this area of psychology, I mean, if we look at the change curve, when people are confronted with the need to do something differently, the first reaction is denial. No, this is not happening, and President Trump was a great example of denialist, but we have the same problem at home. This government, one of the first things that it did, they lowered the taxes for big cars because, it just enlarges your personality. And so first is denial, and then the next phase is even more terrible. It's anger. So, suddenly people will start to act, but it will be from their reptilian brain. It will be negative energy. It will be, this Yellow Vest movement. We don't want to change. Let's change the government, and only then acceptance will come. If it's time for acceptance. So how, and this is probably the key question. So how can we speed up, maybe also with digital tools, this transition from denial with very focused anger that is constructive into acceptance of a new equilibrium? Any ideas on that?
Yes.
Good, great. Then.
Well, we cannot do it with digital tools, I think.
Okay.
So this is quite important because when you have a problem, that was one very lesson of one lecturer I very much admire and respect. He said, what you do first, turn off your computer. It's the key approach is turn off your damn computer. I'm really hard here because the computers are like a pig or something like that. They're just a stupid tool and they might mislead you. It's very dangerous to trust that digitalization will solve any problem which is substantially deeper than the pick or the hammer or whatever. So, but when you try to understand the solution and develop the tools when you need the pick and hammer, then of course you need computers, then you need digitalization, Internet of Things. But the initial way of thinking, turn off these boxes, whatever. One light is in front of us, and it's called low-code or no-code programming. This is a big light. I don't think the society is fully aware of it. I grew up when we had the courses on C++ programming, and it was like, well, you really have to be so super smart to do something. And yeah, we were super smart, killing ourselves with coding and stuff like that. It's like, well, programming is just for freak people which are really deep into the coding. And now it is really wonderful development in this low code or no code programming. And I think we should talk about that much more. It's demystifying the digitalization process. And we should talk about demystification of the digitalization process itself. It's like, well, it's not, let's talk about no code programming. It's really wonderful, It's for me, it's for you. I'm not so young anymore that I would do coding and programming, digitalization, big mystery. You need a big company software. Learn no code programming. It's really wonderful. It's so intuitive. It's a miracle. So I would close my discussion so somebody can also make some closure intervention. But my recommendation, like this bright future, at least from the point of view of digitalization, initially set out turn off, I would say the bright future is no code programming.
Thank you, Primož. Petra?
there we go. Yeah, so when I did my first master's thesis in biochemistry, I remember for all my research, I needed to go to the library and pull the physical journals off the shelf and read everything, and then make a hard copy of it. Go to the copier and copy the publication, so I would have it and I would draw from it. And okay, I'm dating myself now, but it's not that long ago that this happened. So now, we're being bombarded with information to such a degree that this has never happened before, and we're being bombarded from every corner of our universe. So what is the solution here? And I think I would go back to what Primož said earlier, to sort of echo that let's step back from it all and maybe turn off our computers, but really let's think what's important here. And the first thing that's important is that we need to have an independent, objective source of truth. So, and that's much easier said than done. But one way to do that is to really, really focus and support and fight for independent public media. So it's only when you have that that you remove some of this external pressure on what is being said. So it's not the solution to everything, but it's a good first step. And then the second thing that I think is important to do here is to educate people to be critical consumers of information. Because you're never going to say, you can't say, oh, don't go to Facebook to get your news, because tomorrow there might be 3 other apps that are going to have news on there, and just forget it. So what we need to teach people is how to be an educated consumer of the information that you get. So what is the source? And if the source is not an independent public media source, okay, so there's some kind of backstory there. So consider that when you consume this information, or try to also get the opposing side and see what is behind them saying what they're saying. There's always some kind of backstory that you need to consider. Now, and I don't think we are educating our kids to be critical consumers of information, or not just our kids, but we very often forget that we need to be mindful of the backstory of every information that we consume.
Petra, thank you. Yes, digital competencies are key. Nina, maybe your last thought.
I would just add maybe to underline what both of my previous speakers said, but in Slovene, zdrava kmečka pamet. I think this is the key then.
Yes, zdrava kmečka pamet is missing, but actually there are many areas where the same logic applies. So without, open public space, without, quality information, democratic societies cannot work. And I just finished reading a book, How Civil Wars Start and How to Stop Them. And this is the key message. So we have to change the algorithm of social networks in order to survive as a democratic situation, as a democratic civilization. And actually, that was one of my biggest surprises recently, because 2 weeks ago, China adopted a regulatory solution, a law that allows people to switch off artificial intelligence filtering, or promotion or dissemination of information. So you have the power to say, I don't want to live in the information bubble. I want to get mainstream news the same as my neighbor is getting. So I'm not a subject, of marketing. I'm not here that somebody plays with my fears, so I will buy this and that. I'm here as, a member of society, and I need key informations in order to survive. And here is the main problem, because global change is bad for business. I mean, for the current business, people will buy less cars, they will buy less, TVs, they will buy less stuff that they don't need. But you can get message across only if we will be treated, as change makers to the stewards of the planet and not just consumers. And probably if there is one thing we have to change as a democratic society is how Google algorithms work, how Facebook algorithms work, because without that, we will be drowned in unuseful information, and we won't see what's important and what's not important. So maybe, would anybody of you have the closing remark or anything to add? If not, then I will just close the meeting. As we said in the beginning, the environment is a key topic of this century. Today we went through the relation between the digital and the different ways how, with help of digital, we can combat climate change with our experts and even with some listeners. And we got some surprising answers. With this, we end our panel. Thank you, my dear panelists. Thank you, our dear listeners. After a short break, you are all invited to the final part of the event with our special guest, Bradley Sherman. His interesting session will deal with challenges and opportunities of demographic change with a focus on population aging and role of digital in it.